Malcolm-Jamal Warner, dead at the age of 54 on a drowning accident while he was vacationing with his family in Costa Rica.
Has this been difficult for you?
Yeah. Because when you watch someone who you know and love, go through what he's going through.
I am tired of running for shade. And aren't you tired of being hustled and played? And aren't we all tired of crying about how hard it is to be black in America, even if it looks like we've got it made?
Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the legendary actor who played Theo Huxtable, is gone, and what he left behind. It wasn't just a simple farewell, it was a chilling warning.
And if for some reason you can't find a reason to smile, then that's probably the best time to be the reason for somebody else to smile.
Now that he's passed, people are finally starting to dig deeper. Why did no one take him seriously? Why is it that every time someone dares to speak up, something happens to shut them down?
But freedom has its limits, so here we are, tear-streaked and salt-stained faces. Traces of trauma and pain lace our DNA like our black pride is cut and laced with self-hate.
Was this really just some random accident? Or is it part of a much darker pattern that's becoming way too real to brush off? Warner's sudden and heartbreaking death has fans devastated. But others, they're raising serious eyebrows. The 54-year-old icon, known for lighting up screens on The Cosby Show, was reportedly on a family trip in Costa Rica when tragedy struck. According to official reports, he drowned, pulled under by powerful currents off Coley's Beach in Lyman.
Full reports that the 54-year-old was in Costa Rica on a family vacation and accidentally drowned while swimming.
Local authorities are calling it a freak accident, but the details just aren't adding up for everyone. The Associated Press shared that at first, beachgoers were able to pull Warner out of the water, but by the time Costa Rica's Red Cross arrived, it was already too late. He had no signs of life and was rushed to the morgue. But here's where things start to feel off. The timing, the strange circumstances, and most of all, the message Malcolm shared just days before his passing, it's sending shivers down people's spines. Was he trying to say something? Was he warning us about something bigger? Fans aren't just mourning, they're questioning everything. Warner wasn't just relaxing on some tropical getaway. He was on a mission.
Can you tell me the fate of the people who consciously take the bait and embrace the very traits placed upon them by their captors who by design are inclined to keep them believing they're second rates? I'll wait.
A mission to speak his truth loud and clear. And now it feels like that truth may have cost him everything. Just 2 days before he passed, Malcolm dropped the final episode of his podcast, Not All Hood, and fans are now convinced it was his farewell in disguise. But this wasn't some chill convo or feel-good sign-off. What he said, it was raw, it was real, and it hit deep. He opened up about a moment that shook him, a talk with spoken word artist Tamika Georgia Mee Harper. When he told her the podcast was called Not All Hood, she cut him off quick with, "Ain't nothing wrong with the hood." That one comment, it stopped him in his tracks. It forced him to rethink everything. Warner admitted that for too long, the media has pushed one tired version of black culture, the struggle, the crime, the stereotypes, while ignoring the depth, brilliance, and power behind it.
The reason for the title is combating the narrative of black life, black culture that the media focuses on.
He wasn't rejecting the hood. He was calling out a system that's been profiting off misunderstanding it for years. In his own bold words, the hood side, ultimately, historically, is what has always created American culture. That's not just a hot take. It's a direct shot at how Hollywood's been erasing black contributions and repackaging them for profit. A truth too many have tried to bury, but Malcolm didn't stop there. He went even deeper. He got real about how his idea of black excellence had changed. Once side-eyeing the term because of its links to fame and fortune, Warner started to see a different meaning. He shared a heartbreaking convo about how black soldiers are being erased from Arlington National Cemetery. He wasn't just talking culture, he was calling out historical erasure. This wasn't just another episode. This was a man putting everything on the line to speak up before it was too late. Historical truth changed everything for Malcolm. He said it straight, black survival. Not fame, not trophies, not big checks, just surviving.
We're not all hood. The Black community is not a monolith. There's so many levels and lanes to the Black community, and we wanted to have a space where we could acknowledge, discuss all of those lanes.
That's what real Black excellence is. That one line, it hit hard when he said it. But now, after what happened, it hits like a punch to the chest. It's like he knew something was coming, like he felt the clock ticking. Malcolm didn't want to go out chasing applause. He wanted his last message to shine a light on struggle, on pain, on power, on the kind of strength that's born in the fire and still stands tall. Less than 48 hours after dropping that raw and emotional podcast, he was gone. A whole generation grew up watching him as Theo Huxtable, the cool, sometimes goofy son in the Cosby Show family. Millions saw him as that lovable kid with a soft heart and big smile, dealing with dyslexia, taking life lessons from TV parents, and growing up in front of America. He felt real, like someone we knew, someone safe, but that polished image stuck to him like glue. And it raises the big question, who was the real Malcolm-Jamal Warner? When you look behind the fame and flash, you won't find scandal or wild drama attached to his name. What you'll find is a man who quietly carried some heavy pain. He faced real loss. He bore the weight of a TV legacy that got dark real fast after the truth about Cosby exploded. And through it all, he stayed solid. No breakdowns, no wild headlines, just grace under pressure. He didn't crash out like so many other child stars. Instead, he faced his heartbreak, owned his past, and somehow kept growing. When most would have been lost in the noise, Malcolm chose wisdom. He chose reflection. And in doing that, he became more than just Theo. He became a man with a voice, with purpose, and with a story that matters.
It's difficult not to feel something, have some kind of emotional response to, what this person is going through.
From the quiet pain to the powerful truth, Malcolm-Jamal Warner turned his struggles into strength, and the world is only now realizing just how deep his message really ran. The toughest controversy of Malcolm-Jamal Warner's career didn't come from anything he did. It came from something way bigger, something he got dragged into because of who he was connected to, and that connection, none other than Bill Cosby. Malcolm didn't ask for the spotlight during that storm, but once it hit, he couldn't avoid it. His response, it showed just how messy and emotional it really was. Way more complicated than most people realize. To get why he was so torn, you've got to understand how deep his bond with Cosby went. This wasn't just a co-worker situation. Cosby was the one who picked Malcolm out of thousands of kids across the country, handpicked him at just 13 years old to play Theo. And once Malcolm was on set, Cosby didn't just teach him lines, he shaped him. Cosby led by example. No diva behavior, no ego, just professionalism. Malcolm used to say that's what taught him to stay grounded even as the fame rolled in. Cosby even gave him long-term advice, like staying away from trendy slang on the show so it wouldn't feel dated. Years later, Malcolm said that advice was spot on. The show still felt fresh when he watched it with his daughter.
My biggest feeling is I feel sad for, just the way this whole, just the way the whole story has come about.
So when the allegations against Cosby exploded and more than 50 women came forward, Warner was thrown into the fire. He didn't ask to speak on it, but people demanded answers. What he gave wasn't some rehearsed PR line. It was real and it was heartbreaking. In a 2015 interview, Malcolm said, "He's one of my mentors. Just as it's painful to hear any woman talk about SA, whether true or not, it's just as painful to watch my friend and mentor go through this." That one line, it showed the internal war he was fighting. He didn't rush to defend Cosby, but he also didn't throw him away. As Malcolm put it, "I can't defend him, but I won't throw him under the bus either." That's not an excuse. That's someone wrestling with betrayal, loyalty, and the ugly truth all at once. He even called out the media for turning it into a circus, pointing out how the public wasn't even trying to understand the different layers of what was happening. Malcolm wasn't excusing anything. He was asking people to have a real, honest conversation, instead of treating the entire scandal like clickbait. It was a no-win situation, and somehow he still handled it with grace. Walking through the Cosby scandal wasn't just painful for Malcolm-Jamal Warner, it was exhausting. He wasn't just dodging questions or dealing with headlines. He was walking an emotional tightrope that weighed heavy on his shoulders every single day. But what tore him up the most? It wasn't just the accusations against Cosby himself. It was the way the entire legacy of The Cosby Show got dragged down with him. That show wasn't just a paycheck for Malcolm. It was a cultural breakthrough that changed the game for how black families were seen on TV. He said it best, "We've always had The Cosby Show to hold up against that, and the fact that we no longer have that, that's what saddens me the most." For Malcolm, losing the show was like losing a piece of history. He knew future generations might only hear about the Huxtables like some forgotten storybook family, a fairy tale buried under scandal. And on top of the emotional hit, there was a real financial blow too. Warner didn't hide it. When the show got pulled from syndication, it hurt his pockets. He pointed out the double standard loud and clear. Shows by men like Woody Allen and Roman Polanski still aired, while The Cosby Show got completely wiped out. "It's literally taking money out of my pocket," he said. And he wasn't wrong. That wasn't just about a check. That was about how differently black work gets treated in Hollywood when controversy hits. He was losing income and watching the erasure of something that had meant so much to an entire community.
After having had such a long path and long journey, you have something like this that you've got to contend with.
But over time, Malcolm's views started to shift. In the beginning, he believed the show's legacy was too damaged to survive, but then came a game-changing convo with his former co-star, Keisha Knight-Pulliam, the actress who played Rudy. She reminded him that The Cosby Show had done something huge. It inspired generations of young black kids to go to college, to dream bigger, to believe they could have a future like what they saw on screen. That hit him hard. Her saying that really shifted my perspective, Malcolm admitted. That moment became a turning point. The second he stopped mourning what was lost and started celebrating what the show had already given the world. He realized the scandal didn't have to erase the impact. Even with all the mess, the good the show did, that powerful, real-world influence could still stand tall. Malcolm started defending the legacy, not for Cosby, but for every kid who saw themselves in those episodes and believed they could be more. This shift in Malcolm-Jamal Warner's mindset showed just how deep and real his personal growth was. He found a way to hold on to hope, to separate the power of the art from the mistakes of the man behind it. His emotional ride from heartbreak to frustration, then into deep reflection and quiet strength, wasn't some media-trained act. It was a raw, human reaction to a scandal that rocked everything he'd built his life around. But here's the real plot twist. While many child stars went off the rails, Warner stayed solid, and that alone speaks volumes. In an industry filled with chaos, addiction, and downfall, his name stayed out of the mess. No court cases, no wild headlines, no public meltdowns, just calm, steady moves, and it wasn't luck. It was discipline, focus, and straight-up strategy. From the moment The Cosby Show ended, Warner worked hard to step out of Theo Huxtable's shadow. He even admitted he used to hate being called Theo, not because he didn't love the role, but because he didn't want to be stuck in it forever. That wasn't just about pride, it was a career power play. He wanted the world to know he's more than just that kid from TV, and he proved it over and over again. Warner didn't just wait for roles, he created lanes for himself. He directed episodes of shows like Kenan and Kel, dropped into the music world as a skilled bass player and spoken word artist, and even took home a Grammy for Best Traditional R&B Performance. He was nominated again for a spoken word poetry album, showing that his pen game was just as sharp as his acting. As an actor, he refused to play it safe. From comedy in Malcolm and Eddie to intense roles in The Resident, Suits, Major Crimes, and even American Crime Story, The People, vis O.J. Simpson, Warner's range was undeniable. Every move was calculated, every role a reminder. This man's career had layers.
They were tired of me fighting with the writers.
But maybe the most powerful part of Warner's story is what you don't see. No arrests, no scandals, no headline-grabbing chaos. While some of his peers got caught in the fast life, Warner stayed grounded. He credits that stability to his mother, Pamela, who managed his career from day one and drilled discipline into him early. She wasn't just a parent. She was the shield that kept him focused, sharp, and clear of all the noise. Malcolm-Jamal Warner didn't just survive the industry, he mastered it. Way back in the 80s, before social media movements, hashtags, or viral causes, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was already pushing positive vibes and real-life advice. In 1988, he dropped a book called Theo and Me Growing Up Okay, where he gave young fans guidance on dodging drugs and making solid life choices. It wasn't about clout or celebrity hype. It was about responsibility. That kind of focus at such a young age, it says a lot. While so many child stars spiraled in the spotlight, Warner was studying the game, learning what not to do, and building a life that would keep him out of those same traps. He wasn't just surviving fame, he was outsmarting it. But Warner's journey didn't stop at clean living. His creative growth told its own powerful story. Sure, that early book was connected to his Theo fame, but as he matured, his work got bolder, sharper, and way more socially charged. His Grammy-nominated spoken word album, Hiding in Plain View, tackled the real stuff. Mass incarceration, racism, deportation, not sugar-coated topics for mainstream approval. He also released a short film in 2017, You Can't Hear Me, diving deep into the pain and silence around these same issues. These weren't feel-good projects. They were statements, backed by experience and purpose. And it's no coincidence his sense of awareness started young. Warner's father made sure he studied powerful black voices like Langston Hughes growing up. That early exposure to truth-tellers helped shape him into the thoughtful artist he eventually became. This evolution from child actor to cultural commentator wasn't some happy accident. It was intentional. Warner matched talent with purpose and refused to be boxed in by Hollywood's expectations. He grew on his own terms, no matter how loud the industry got. But beyond all the headlines, music, and roles, some of the moments that shaped Malcolm the most were private, personal heartbreaks the public barely saw. These weren't scandals. They were emotional hits that quietly shifted how he moved through life. One of the biggest tragedies came in his early adulthood, the loss of Michelle Thomas. She wasn't just his co-star who played Justine, Theo's on-screen girlfriend. She was also his real-life love. Michelle passed away far too young, and her death left a deep, lasting scar on Malcolm's heart. It's those moments, the ones behind the curtain, that truly molded the man he became. Even though their romance ended back in 1994, Malcolm-Jamal Warner and Michelle Thomas stayed deeply connected. They weren't just former co-stars, they were soul-deep friends. So when Michelle was diagnosed in 1997 with a rare, aggressive form of stomach cancer, it hit hard. And when she passed away in December 1998 at just 30 years old, Malcolm was reportedly right there with her, by her side till the very end. Losing someone that young, someone who had shared his rise to fame and meant so much to him, forced Malcolm to face the kind of pain most can't even imagine. And the way he dealt with it, quiet, graceful, no cameras, no public breakdown, just real deep grief carried with dignity. That kind of heartbreak doesn't just fade, it shapes a person. And for Malcolm, it helped build the thoughtful, grounded, and emotionally intelligent man he became.
As I remind myself that no matter what's going on, there's always a reason to smile. Like if you just take a minute to stop and take stock, I guarantee you can find at least one reason to smile.
But years later, love hit differently. And this time, the world was watching. From 2011 to 2013, Malcolm was in a high-profile relationship with actress Regina King. The two had history, having known each other since their teen star days in the 80s. They even lived together, and to fans, they looked like a perfect match. But in 2013, everything fell apart, fast. Tabloids lit up with stories that Malcolm had suddenly told Regina and her son to move out, and in a 2015 interview, Regina shared a moment that had fans shocked. She claimed Malcolm dumped her on Valentine's Day and then had the nerve to send her flowers with a card that read, "I still love you." Her response? She threw the flowers straight in the trash. That kind of drama was a whole different kind of pain. Unlike the private sorrow of losing Michelle, this breakup was messy, loud, and on full display for the world to judge. After that, Warner changed the way he moved. He slammed the door shut on public relationship talk. No more oversharing, no Instagram love posts, no interviews about who he was dating. He kept it locked up, and for good reason. Between the heartbreak of losing Michelle and the chaos of breaking up with Regina, Malcolm learned two huge lessons. First, love is fragile and rare, something to protect, not parade. And second, when love becomes entertainment, it can destroy your peace. One loss made him emotionally deeper. The other made him draw the line. Together, they taught him how to guard his heart and his privacy, no matter how loud the world got. These hard-earned lessons shaped the man Malcolm-Jamal Warner grew into, grounded, sharp, and unshakably real. And now, fans are starting to see a pattern that's too clear to ignore. Every time a black celeb starts pulling back the curtain, starts speaking truth, challenging the system, or trying to flip the script, something always seems to happen. And Warner, he was right in that moment, stepping boldly into a new chapter. He wasn't just looking back on his life, he was starting to reimagine the future. Through his podcast, he carved out a space where real conversations about black identity could breathe. Unfiltered, unapologetic, and untouched by Hollywood's shiny distractions. That space might have seemed small, maybe even niche, but it was powerful. And to the powers that be, it was dangerous. Because Warner wasn't just playing it safe. He was peeling back the gloss and showing a version of blackness that wasn't watered down for mainstream comfort.
And we still think it's dope. Just like the music we're programmed to celebrate.
And then came the Meghan Markle moment. Quiet, but loaded. During an earlier podcast interview on the tour show, Warner was asked about working with Meghan during their time on Suits. At first, he kept it cool, said she was nice and cool, the kind of answer you'd expect. But then came the curveball. The interviewer asked if he knew she was black. Malcolm paused, then dropped a line that had layers. The great thing is that she knew. On the surface, it sounded like praise, but underneath, that sentence hit different. He wasn't just saying Meghan knew her background, he was implying something way deeper. That she knew but didn't always show it, that her closeness to whiteness was intentional. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how Hollywood liked her. Polished, palatable, and not too outspoken. He didn't need to call her out, he didn't raise his voice. It was all in the tone, the pause, the weight behind those words. He was saying a lot without saying too much, and that made it even louder. Warner wasn't out here chasing controversy. He was holding a mirror up to the industry. And in doing so, he walked straight into the same uncomfortable territory that so many truth tellers before him had found themselves in. That subtle critique, it's hitting way harder now. And people are starting to see it through a whole new lens.
It was cool. We didn't really have scenes together, so I'd see her, and she was really nice, really cool. My best friend, that's talking about Chris.
Let's not forget, this is the same industry that once lifted Malcolm-Jamal Warner up as a child star in the 1980s, only to keep him at a distance once he grew up and started speaking his mind. He didn't crash and burn, he didn't chase clout. He built a solid creative career as a director, musician, poet, and advocate. And yet, when he died, silence. No star-studded tributes, no primetime retrospectives, no emotional roundtables on his legacy. Just a few brief headlines and the sound of Hollywood moving on, like he was never part of shaping an entire generation's childhood. For someone who gave so much to the culture, that silence, loud as hell. Now fans are going back to that final podcast episode, and it's starting to sound less like a casual conversation and more like a breadcrumb trail. Warner was trying to tell us something. He spoke on cultural erasure, about how black soldiers fought and died for a country that never gave them the freedom they defended. He honored the hood, not as a punchline, but as the origin of American innovation and resilience. He challenged the idea of success being about fame or money. For Malcolm, real success was measured by survival, by how you made it through. And just as these ideas were starting to gain attention, he was gone. People are starting to notice this pattern. He's not the first. Chadwick Boseman, quietly fighting cancer while playing roles that reshaped how black men are seen in film, gone. Nipsey Hussle, preaching ownership, independence, and rebuilding the block, gunned down. Dave Chappelle, nearly blackballed for stepping away from the machine and refusing to sell out, targeted and dragged. And now, Malcolm-Jamal Warner, a man who finally had a platform to speak freely.
I had the show and felt like people was trying to control me. I was freaked out. I don't know, I just had to get out of there. I walked away. It says $50 million, it's all gone, I'm scared.
To challenge Hollywood's cleaned up version of black life and to uplift the parts of the culture that don't bring in big studio dollars, suddenly no longer here. We're not screaming conspiracy, but let's be real, it's looking suspicious. Every time a black figure starts honoring the truth instead of the trophy, pushing struggle over sanitized success, something happens, something tragic. And it always feels like it happens just when their voice is starting to break through. It's a cycle, and people are finally starting to see it. Malcolm-Jamal Warner deserves so much more than a headline, more than a quiet blur buried in the gossip blogs. He was more than just a former child star. He was a man with a powerful message, one that pushed back against the lies we've been told to accept as truth. And now, that message is all we've got left. It's time we stop brushing it off and really listen before someone else gets silenced. If this story hit you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear the truth. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. And yeah, we'll be back with more. See you in the next one.